Okay. So here's what we got. A discussion on civil disobedience. This comes from a number of conversations, one of which, or a couple of which, started on Facebook. This was my reply to somebody who said, "What do we do when we realize that voting doesn't make a difference?" I said, "Do not get your license renewed, do not get your tags on the car, do not pay your tickets, pull your money from the banks. If you are called to jury duty and the crime is small, innocent, innocent, innocent. Stop buying into the regulations and taxes and get your money in your home. Buy goods that are worth money, that can either be traded or melted down for worth. Grow your own food, can your own food, process rainwater, and get solar panels. Make at-home radiators and panels too. Learn how to recharge batteries that are not sold as rechargeable. Take apart your things and invent new things. Create, innovate, think for yourself, and do not obey unjust laws. When you protest, go with 2 people always. Make sure one of them is always filming. Organize friends and family in your area. Speak out publicly. Make a sign and hold it up in a public place. Let the world know you are alive and willing to live the way you believe is right." And I got a lot of positive feedback. And tonight I'm sitting here with Tiny Smalls from Columbus Freedom Rally and Unite Ohio. On the post, and I don't want to name anybody else's names because I haven't asked permission to do so. Even though it's a public forum, public post on there, I still haven't asked permission, so I don't want to do that. But the guy whose initials are MT backwards, we will call him number 1. And then the other guy will be number 2. Does that sound about right?
That'll work, yeah.
Okay. So, gentleman number 1 said, and let me continue here. I'll read everything I can. I said, "This is the beginning of my answer to what do we do when we see voting does not work." And then I had a conversation with my friend in Belgium, and he said he had read my status and it reminded him of an article that he read just a couple of days ago. It was solely about the culture sector in Belgium. New government cut down almost all government support for culture. The writer was angry at the entire culture sector doing nothing but complaining and writing petitions. He said, "Stop bitching and do something. You're supposed to be artists. You're supposed to be creative. Get your money out of here and put in some tax paradise. Get all your profits abroad. Use your theaters to organize how to commit fraud courses. If you see members of parliament in your theaters, drag them out, strip them, cover them in shit, tape it, and call it art. Refuse to make paintings in service of the government and take all public art down. Block the highways, dance between the traffic and call it choreography. Do something, make guerrilla or shut up." And something's lost in translation there, but I think we all get the gist. He said a young sculptor told him something interesting as well. And this will give us Americans some insight into education in Belgium. He says, "You know how in high school they always taught us about the end of the big stories, about how after the fall of communism and the big ideologies came to an end, they also told us that that's what postmodernism was all about. Well, that the idea is just an implicit conformism to capitalist ideology. The end of the great stories, the so-called end of the belief in different ideologies actually indicates the belief that there is no alternative to the way we live, that there is no alternative to our economical, political, societal model. But it's bullshit. That's why we're living in the postmodern era. Postmodernist era. Sorry, because it's goddamn time for some alternative way of living and perceiving this world." It's great to see how suddenly people used to be bitching about nuances have started to come together on this one idea. We need to reinvent ourselves. We need to change and address some fundamental flaws if we want to evolve. I'm meeting more beautiful people like this every day, and it is great to hear this from your side of the pond as well. And I said, first organize and unite by spreading info, then create methodology that adapts to current circumstance. Then enact large civil disobedience as one voice of many. Demand to be arrested if the protester next to you is threatened with arrest. Make them try to lock up entire cities for committing no crimes when protesting. This will wake people up. If people fill the streets and do not allow commerce to happen, if people stop paying into the system that is killing them, if people realize that revolution calls even when you are comfortable, if and when the citizens realize their strength, they will change the globe. Look at history. When the American populace stands up, they have always changed the world. The divide and conquer tactics are old and worn out, and henceforth no longer working on the masses. We are numb to the rhetoric that tells us how to separate and why we do not need to speak to our neighbors. The veil is lifting quickly, and people see very well for themselves that it is time to stop our current ruling class in its tracks as soon as possible. If someone is unable to see the country circling the drain, it is because they have been in a coma for generations. Free men and women of every conceivable walk of life are coming together with the simple understanding that it is time. Time calls on our generation to right a wrong, and our reaction to our given situation will echo for the next couple hundred years, whether it is good or bad. We can either be known as the weakest generation that squandered the greatest country you could ever inherit, or the generation that fought and won for the future Americans who have not been conceived yet. Our legacy, or our time spent here, will echo. It is up to us if our memories will be reason to cry for joy, or out of desperate heartache and confusion. Now, before I get into the naysayers online, which I appreciate and respect their opinions, and I told them I was going to do a video and asked them if they would watch it, and they said yeah. Tiny, I wanted to ask you what your thoughts were on just what's been mentioned so far. And I know that's a lot, but you can start anywhere.
The main problem is my mic was muted.
Yep.
Now, what really is the problem with this country is a lot of people separate so easily and are quick to judge something before they actually read it. You know, and I mean, this may not be the case, but I think that publicly, if we did unify, we could change things. And you know, we are billions of people on this planet. You know, if we take over the very small, very weak, very cowardly ruling class that is above us, and we take them out of power, we can change things. But the hardest thing to do is unify people, because there's a lot of people that think that, you know, there's only so much that can be done. You have to abide by the system because the system is in place and it's doing the greater good. But when the system starts doing the good for themselves, which a lot of people don't see, is, you know, it's all bad. There's nothing that we can do individually. We have to come together. We can't divide ourselves within our own ranks. We can't divide ourselves on our own streets. We can't divide ourselves in our own communities. We can't let it happen. We can't. I mean, that's our future. The pollution that has been ruining our earth wasn't caused by an individual. It was caused by somebody who allowed the individual to do it and to perpetuate it and to poison the land, poison the children, to poison the skies, to poison the very ground, the very water that we consume and use to consume. You know, it's it's very powerful stuff. And unless we all come together, it's never going to change. You know, and that's the very, very biggest point I want to bring out about this. And to do that in a time where there's 6 media companies that own all of the sources and facets of media. I mean, you can research it for yourself. I don't want to just put that out there without having something to back it up, because I've done the research and I can tell you and attest to it. But I want you personally, as a viewer, to look that shit up. I mean, really, it's self-discernment like that is is what leads to the path of knowledge, and knowledge is power. Money isn't power. You know, cowards that dress in suits that say that they're doing this for the greater good, that's not power. That's an illusion. You know, the time has gone in such we're going too fast. You know, for our own time, we need to slow it the fuck down and combine. We need to realize globally that to support a small few is strangling us. It is basically kicking the chair out from us on the noose that is tightening ever so much tighter. I mean, and with that being said, I totally agree with everything you say, Jeremy. I mean, totally. You know,
Let's go to the first thing that Mr. Gentleman Number One said. He said, "One problem, Jeremy. Our country has no problem building more prisons. They will lock up 1,000 activists just to keep the peace." So, before I say something about that first comment, what would you say to that?
what I would say is there's no such thing as a prison for the mind. There's no such thing as a prison for hard facts. There's no such thing as a prison for the truth. It cannot be quelled. This is something that is growing within all of us. If we can just take the time and spread knowledge, there's nothing that can stop it. Once this starts snowballing, we are going to make a difference. I mean, whether it's you and I doing this video right now, or it's 1,000 people protesting in Washington, or even the whole country waking up all at once and taking everything back and making it prosperous again. I mean, it's impossible to quell the human spirit. That's what I have to say to that.
I agree. I agree with what you're saying. And on top of that, we have, where he says, one problem, Jeremy. Our country has no problem building more prisons. I'd like to stop there and address that first. I don't expect a lot from a person that already has that defeatist attitude. They're already, saying, I'm a slave. I know what I am. I'm aware of my status or lack thereof. And so he's already succumbed to the realization of how bad things are. The difference, I believe, between him and I is that I'm willing to fight where he's willing to succumb. And so I would expect him to have the attitude that he does. He goes on to say, I like some of your ideas, but doing things to get locked up doesn't help. It just doesn't take another warrior. It just takes another warrior out of the fight. And let me go back to the second part of what he said first. They will lock up 1,000 activists just to keep the peace. Well, let me say it like this. They'll lock up 100,000 people to keep running their agenda if we let them. But if your mom was down there, if your grandfather was down there and he was holding up a sign because he remembered what this country used to be like, and then he got locked up and the police treated him badly and then the courts treated him badly, would you just succumb? Would everybody just succumb? Or is there a time? Is there a line? Is there, a point at which people will decide to stand up? And that's where I'm coming from. It's no longer a place of let's let them run their agenda, and then maybe down the line something will happen or whatever. I'm not even sure what anybody else's plan was. I don't know that anybody offered one, but we'll find out. We'll see what else he says here. What do you think of that?
Yeah, yeah. I totally agree. I mean, sorry. I
Oh, you're fine. The second gentleman said, if you don't pay tickets and renew tags, you go to jail. I feel you, but some things you just have to comply with if you want the privilege of driving and remaining free. The privilege of driving and remaining free. Go ahead with that one.
yeah, well, it's a privilege to meet you. It's a privilege and an honor to to honor somebody, but when we become cattle that have to submit to every little thing, we become more used to the process of losing. We become used to the process of having to go through somebody else to gain something. We have to go through, I mean, it is. I don't think it's right for every person to drive around, belligerently. That's not. I'm not advocating that, but at the same time, when we start losing our grasp on what we have control over in our own lives, that's when I draw the line. There should be some kind of regulation for everything. We're not saying that it should be torn down completely. There should be regulation that has fairness and is not so one-sided and is not so um, filtering, not such a process. Like if you go to the DMV, those people, I've come across some beastly people that are just horrible customer service capable people, and that's because they've been drilled into their heads that that they have to do this function of this job because they're doing something that they don't like, and that's a lot of people in society. But when you work for the government, it really takes a toll on you. And these are the same people that, people that don't pass the test, they yell in their face, I mean, and on the same side, we've got people that are causing problems. Um, it's going to happen. Yes, it's going to happen. But as far as privileges and liberties, we should not have such a tightened grip on these things. We've got to, instead of having one entity, like say the BMV or DMV, ruling everything, we should break it down to the state level. I mean, if the more community we have in the sense of government, the more community we have. Period. The federal government should not have its hands in people driving on streets that they're never going to see. Legislators make laws for people that they're never even going to come in contact with. That it's so impersonal. The ideology behind one law is screwed up by a few people. That happens way too much, and that's the big government thing. That's Big Brother watching over everybody, and that's what we're fighting for. We don't want filthy hands in every little step that we take in our lives.
Yeah, and I have a real problem with the general way of thinking when he says the privilege of driving and remaining free. All of that bothers me. All of it. I know that they say it's a privilege to drive in this country. I've always said that's bullshit. Our country is way too expansive for it to be a privilege for us to drive. We have to be able to drive just to get to work. So that's stupid. I think we could completely redress the way we have driving done in this country. And a lot of sovereign citizens will tell you, and I was on a show where they cited a case about a woman that had a car. She put her own tag on it with a piece of cardboard. She didn't have a license given to her by the state because you don't need these things. Now that may sound a bit extreme to other people. That's like a societal breakdown. But then I have to ask the question, why are we the only species that pays to live here? Does it make sense to people to live in the wealthiest first world country on planet Earth and you're still paying for food, clothes, the basic things you need to live? I think that's ridiculous, but I also believe that until every single human evolves together, we are not going to be able to together move on to a place in a way, in a direction that takes us away from those systems. So in the meantime, until all humans ascend to Christ consciousness together, I believe we can find a better way than what we have now. This was the next thing I said. I said the aforementioned sets a tone for a general way of thinking. People feel trapped by this system and as if they have no choices or options. This brings to light just some ideas that are a product of a different way of living and believing, a new perspective that shines light in a different direction. As far as a plan of action, what I listed above is an eventuality as many see it. We can make it our choice to be civilly disobedient and do it in an organized fashion on our terms. But none of this happens as an individual. No one should martyr themselves. This expresses the need for one another, community, unity. Civil disobedience is needed and will work when enough of the law-abiding citizens see fit to throw their driver's license and the garbage together in the trash cans at the State House. And they said, and this was an incredible response, I thought. Now, are you ready for this?
Yeah.
Acts like you described don't really help change things. Remember in the beginning of this when I said I'm not really surprised by his opinion or attitude?
Yep.
He says, then this is kind of contradictory. He says, we need to change the laws first. Okay.
Yeah. Let me stop you right there. We don't have control over the laws that are being made. If you think voting works, you might as well think that petting a porcupine is a good idea. I mean, especially the wrong way.
Now, go ahead.
It's. I mean, there's definitely. You can't defeat yourself before you even get started. I mean, if you're thinking that there is no hope, then you can think that. But I refuse. I refuse to let this state perpetuate, and I refuse to circle this bowl. I'm not going to let it happen. Using the system against itself doesn't work. It doesn't work, hands down. You can't change a law unless you are a lawmaker and a legislator, because voting only, like, if you take a look at a bill that is being voted upon, that thing is about 3 to 4 inches thick of information, because they put in so many different things that don't have anything to do with the bill that they're trying to pass, but they're just sneaking in legislation. And these sneaky bastards have been doing it and pulling the rug from under us for over years. I mean, decades. And, I mean, I can think of at least two things, like the Federal Reserve and the federal income tax. That's two things right there, swept under our feet and pulled out, and all the money is pooling into this ginormous conglomerate corporocracy that we call the American government. I mean, it's it's huge, it's big, it's massive, it's scary. It's not something we can't overcome, though. There's nothing we can do by sitting idly by and doing nothing. We have to start doing something. We have to bring these topics up. We have to start the snowball effect on it, because once 10 people tell 10 more people, they're going to tell 10 more of their friends each, and it's going to be 100 people banned instantly. I mean, That's how it happens. That's how information works. It spreads. I mean, it's the best source that we have is information, and there's no way we can use the system that exists. It's not going to help anything. And sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, no reason to apologize. You were absolutely right. And we have where he says acts like you described don't really help change things, and he's talking about civil disobedience, um, which it comes off as a dangerous ignorance of history, because then he says you can't disobey the law and expect change to just happen. But our Declaration of Independence was breaking a law, and change happened. I mean, that is how you make change. That was how they've done it across the world in many countries historically. Satyagraha, which is Mahatma Gandhi's principle of civil disobedience and nonviolence. You know what I mean? And they got British rule out of India. I mean, that just, you'd have no legs to stand on there, none whatsoever. He says, unless you can fight an army, you will lose and be jailed or worse. Well, let's look at the sentence backwards. Jailed or worse. You're absolutely right. Anytime you stand up to tyrants, you absolutely cannot fear a cage or death. Those two notions need to become ridiculous to you, because you can be taken from your family. Period. You're standing up for what's right. Now, either you choose to live in a way that says I was a subservient, good slave, or I fought like hell for my children and my family so that they could have a better place. I mean, that's where it comes down to for me. What about you, Tiny?
Me too. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, if we don't do something, this is going to just pull us down deeper. This is an anchor that's weighing the entire world down right now. And there's no prison that can hold knowledge. I mean, the human spirit cannot be broken. I mean, we're gonna always fight for freedom. Freedom is being able to make the choices and deal with the consequences. That is, to me, one of the biggest definitions of freedom is being responsible for yourself. Freedom is responsibility. Freedom is knowing right from wrong. I mean,
And it's a privilege for damn sure, but it's a privilege given to us by right of the death of the men who died fighting for liberty. It is not a privilege given to us by government, for God's sakes. That is the last thing anybody needs to think. I mean, that is exactly what they want you to think. That is exactly what the ruling class wants you to believe.
yeah.
He says acts of civil disobedience barely make the news unless hundreds of thousands are involved. Well, let me stress your point a little bit further. You're absolutely right. Pay attention this November the 5th. We're going to be down at the Columbus State House with a lot of people. Ohio Patriot Bikers, Anti-Monsanto, Anti-Common Core, Columbus Freedom Rally, Forgotten Country, Overpasses for America, Anonymous, Unite Ohio, the 3% Irregular Militia, 345th Southern Brotherhood. We've got, all these groups that are going to be there, and it probably won't even make the local news. It's also not just a national protest, it's a global protest. So it's going on in every big city in America and every big city in the world, and I guarantee you they will have fluff on every single major news media. So what you've done by saying acts of civil disobedience barely make the news unless hundreds of thousands are involved is you've proved our point even further. The media is corrupt. The media is supposed to be the fourth estate to watch our asses and protect us. You can see that they're bought out. You even said it in your own words. If we had true media, that's the first damn thing they'd be involved in. What's going on? Who's keeping checks and balances alongside of us? But you don't see them doing that. You got anything?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a global problem. If we in the Constitution it says "we the people," and that to me is sets off the entire tone for the entire Constitution, because it is not an oligarchy where a small group makes all the decisions, which it is. That's not what it means. It doesn't mean people should be subjected to being button pushers the rest of their lives, or working for corporations that are tying their dreams down to make their own, to make smaller dreams possible. I mean, we've all existed on this planet wanting a piece of the planet, and if we're tearing it apart and tearing each other apart, trying to get something out of it, that's just totally anti progressive. It's anti
Human.
human. It's anti everything. I mean, it's counterintuitive. It's counterbalanced. It's counter effective. It needs to be countered. Really, I mean,
Yeah, hence the reason for the video. And I'm picking on the poor guy here going through his paragraph, but it's worth dissecting, because what I had said above it and before he had said this was I talked about that general tone of thinking. This is not just his general tone of thinking. A lot of people believe this way, so it needs to be addressed. And I don't want you to think that I'm just picking on you. It's a way to go through the dialogue honestly and say, this is what I think about everything you have in print. And then of course you can retort however. Maybe we'll find some common ground. I hope so. Um, but I don't know, with language, he says you can preach and preach all day long and you'll never get the kind of attention you'll need to jumpstart a nationwide movement against anything. Okay? Say that to Occupy, who's global. Say, I'm going to go through. Say that to James Neighbors of Overpasses, which is national. Say that to Anonymous, which is global.
global. Yes.
Yeah.
Universal.
Yeah.
Mars.
Yeah. I mean, we have and then just our organization, Unite Ohio, started out just being a Central Ohio thing. Very quickly, it was Cincinnati coming up with Dayton and everybody. It was now we have the people by Lima and Live Truth Radio and Anti-Common Core and all these guys. Um, you know, we've grown statewide, and then we've had phone, where we're working with Pennsylvania. We've gotten phone calls from different Patriot leaders from the Carolinas, Kentucky, Tennessee, a group out in Indiana. I mean, so you're just categorically wrong, especially if you are able to speak on behalf of the tone of a people, where if someone can say that something that a lot of people are thinking or feeling, that national conscious of the American people, where we're all seeing our country circle in the drain, and then somebody just comes up and says something about it, and speaks honestly. You have no idea how many people we've affected. You have no idea how many people we've affected with the Miss Lease flag situation alone. We got national attention for that. And then if you include my friends in Wales, London, Africa, and Kenya, so I mean, I guess that doesn't really count because they're my friends, but still. I mean, that right there is a national reach. That one story made national news every single time. I was actually supposed to be on a radio broadcast tonight, and I ended up doing this. Crazy Wolf Radio. If you guys did get to check them out, they start at 12 a.m. Eastern Time. But they talk about a lot of the same things, and they're out west. And when I said, hey, this is who I am, they knew who I was. They knew about our organization and about the Miss Lee's flag situation. So, I mean, it's just categorically wrong. It's just categorically wrong. to get the attention you'll need. Da, 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 da. He said we need less sheeple to educate themselves and put their efforts into politics. I know, I'm not even sure where to start or what that means. Change the system from within. Okay, basically he's saying change the system from within.
There you go.
Problem is everyone who makes their way, and then he creates his own problem. Everyone who makes their way into politics eventually has a price, some more than others, but there is a price they'll accept to throw their convictions and morals out the window. Until we can change greed and desire for money, the politics will never change. Meanwhile, decent-hearted guys like you sacrifice their freedom and safety, and honestly, their cause is blown away in the wind 6 months after you're gone. To say that to how many leaders have there been? Like, they have statues now and everything else. You know, I mean, there'll be so many people that continue in history. It probably won't be any of us, but there'll be plenty of people that continue to make their marks. You know, whether it's Martin Luther or Martin Luther King. You know, whether it's the way
Marx.
the JF.
Marx made some marks. Karl Marx.
Yeah, yeah. Henry David Thoreau.
Yep.
You know, I mean, we could go on and on. So, blown away in 6 months after you're gone. To make the things you describe work, you need millions and millions ready to act. Meanwhile, we can't even get these people to the polls to change the government. Nobody believes in the government.
I mean, how do you build an army that is ready to sacrifice when most people who claim to care can't even sacrifice a couple/few hours needed to vote? Just my point of view. No disrespect. I mean, there's no disrespect taken, and I hope that we don't disrespect you as well. I mean, but this whole ideology that we have no other choice is where a lot of people lose ground. There's always, now let me stress that even more, always a choice. And if we don't accept that there is, then we're done. I mean, it's the type of defeating nature that human beings who have tyranny suffer. I mean, that's the bottom line. Suffering, you know, we have so much suffering in this country. We have people brought into this country that aren't even from here, that are more well off than veterans who have fought in wars, have lost limbs and lives, and that to me is, you know, what purpose does that serve? That doesn't serve a greater purpose. That seems to me like it serves a certain agenda. It serves a certain forced purpose, and I think that there's no way that we can be stopped. There's no way that we can really stop this spread of truth unless we are stopped by them themselves. And if we are, and people see this happening, you know, maybe we will be somehow martyred and still make a change. I mean, one of the greatest things about the group Anonymous is they are everyone. They are people. They are construction workers to food workers to meth addicts to, I mean, you know, I don't mean to like bring them down, but I mean, it's every walk of life pretty much. You can have nuns, nurses, you can have doctors in there, you can have engineers, you can have even politicians, you know, and that shows me that people have solidarity. It exists. It's out there. You know, we're trying to spread it. We need it to counteract the boot being on our necks. We need it to counteract this financial system that is raping us. We need to reinstate the original Constitution. We need to reevaluate the situations with the borders. We should probably close all the borders so we can fix ourselves and then worry about the rest of the goddamn world. You know?
Yeah, I agree. And we have maybe not a lot of time to get things done. You know, it seems like we started circling the drain much faster. All of a sudden, we're nearing the center of the maelstrom, and we're getting ready to just get sucked in. That's what it feels like. A lot of people are thinking that working from inside of the system is so you would need people to believe in the system. If you had more people believing in the system, you wouldn't, have this situation where people don't vote. It is a complete lack of confidence, and it's because you can plainly see that the ruling class has zero interest in making things better for us. Think about it. All of the voting hasn't worked. Look at what your voting has done. If voting worked, it would be illegal. Voting, voting doesn't work. It does not work, and we've shown with the Bush election, at the very least, how it doesn't work on a national level. And then if you do just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of investigating, uh, we have elections on November 4th, and sign up to work at a voting office, and you can watch it happen right in front of you. You can watch the voter fraud happen right in front of you. It's not an exaggeration. Just go be a volunteer. Just go check it out for yourself, because we have. We actually we know exactly what we're talking about. That's why we're here. We got to this point of nonconformity and civil disobedience, and we are right now, like I had listed in the list before, we're organizing. And you're dead wrong. Carrying those signs and holding them up. We have a member. It was one person and her child with her, and they were both holding up a sign. And it was for the Patriots that were riding to D.C., a national movement, by the way. And just to see this woman and her child standing there holding up signs meant everything to those bikers. And that picture ended up circulating everywhere. There's another picture where there's a protester holding up a sign that says, "Until you wake up, I will fight for you." When people see that, it means something to them. It may not mean anything to you, but it means a lot to a lot of other people. We've seen our membership go up, and it continues to, because people are interested. And let me address like assassination. You said 6 months after I'm gone. This has nothing to do with me. It really doesn't. This is a collective effort of a lot of people, and the thing is everybody shares the same idea. If something were to happen to one of us, we will all be able to pick up that torch because we have the same ideals. I want to implore you and everybody else, anybody who's going to be within earshot of this video, the importance of discerning for yourself. All right, forget what you've been taught to believe your entire lives, because it's probably fabricated. It's probably a lie made to look pretty. So, we don't even ask people to believe us. The best thing you can do is research it for yourself. Look it up for yourself. If you don't think that this is a time when the good soil itself is begging the American people to revolt, then we won't find you standing shoulder to shoulder with us. But when we get our country back, we will see you working just like you do now. Except this time when you work, it'll be for a really, really damn good purpose. There'll be reason to it, and you won't work as hard, and you won't work as much because you won't need to. A lot of folks are unaware that Americans used to work 10 hours a week to support their family. There were jokes and things about what the American people will do with all of their time. Well, they figured it out. They made us so incredibly damn busy, we can't raise our kids, we can't cook dinner, we can't blah, 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 blah. It was, and think about this. All of our elected and appointed officials are graduates from Ivy League colleges. They all attend the same schools. Their families all know each other. They have the majority of the wealth in a very, very small percentage of people. All of these things are right in front of us. And I think that kind of attitude from the gentleman is very commonplace, and it needs to be challenged. It needs to be questioned. So that was my rant. Go ahead, Tiny.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, when you have when you have a small group that is making the decisions for everybody, you're going to have something that is so one-sided. You can be a Democrat, Republican, Independent who's in the Tea Party, and conservative liberal, and you will still have opposition. I mean, you can be a part of everything, and nobody will care because they have their own group and their own following and their own, and then that's the thing that we really need to cut the ties on is the separation. Why don't we start, like, say, humanists? I mean, I think that already exists actually, but why don't we start, just being people? Why don't we just start treating each other positively? Why can't we just walk over to our neighbor's house and just talk to them about their day? I mean, it's like you said, we're too busy. We are being distracted by all this ADHD and attention span usurping information that's just flashed in our faces in every source of media. There's commercials on every single game you try to play on your phone, on your computer. There's I mean, if you turn on your PlayStation right now and go look, there's the PlayStation Store. What does it have? It has ads. It has ads to sell you things that you don't need. I mean, really, honestly, if you think about it, the American workday was 10 hours a day, and they worked hard. They didn't work backbreaking. I mean, they did some backbreaking things, but they didn't they paced themselves because they knew that this country could grow, but it could grow at a rapid rate. But they knew that if they took their time and invested in their families, that they would create a legacy. And that's the problem too. Also, is the legacies that families have created. It's kind of a double-edged sword. You've got we strive for the wrong things anymore. We strive to be rich, which if there's a small percentage of the populace with all the money, that's not going to happen. If we try to be successful, it comes back to the same thing. Those small majority will either let you into their club and let you make that money. There is no I'm going to make my own way, because those ties are cut off by those people that have made their way. It's really hard. It's the truth. It's a reality that we should all face. I know people that are entirely miserable with their jobs because it's basically slavery. If you think about it, you are enslaved by a company who is your master. You're allowed to do what the master says you are allowed to do while you're at the master's, let's say, what is that, plantation or office building, if you will, and you are forced to do their little work, their busy work, just to make them richer, to buy them a private jet that they use to take their kids who don't appreciate a goddamn thing across the world to places that they make fun of people and don't even respect the culture that they're in. And that comes down to, you know, the I mean, it comes down to a lot of things. I don't know, if we had community, if we had a better sense of community, I think that would definitely make a change. That would definitely be better. If we could interact with people without having hate or division, that'd be great too. If we had a world that did not need militaries except to protect the world from outside invaders, I think that'd be a lot different. But then again, who knows what's going to happen? I just hope for the best, honestly. Even with
Well,
all the crushing information that I have seen that is so disheartening, that has brought me to tears, that has changed my life, I still think that there's hope. I refuse to give up. I'm a stubborn bastard.
well, and I think we're better off trying to find the unity now than just standing aside and waiting for people to use the political system. So
Yep.
I think we pretty well covered that. If there are any more questions, I'm sure there'll be a follow-up, at least on the thread on my Facebook to this. So the thread starts, do not get your license renewed, do not get tags on the car. So that's how it starts. I posted it October 13th at 12:46 p.m. So if you guys want to look for that, go ahead. If you enjoyed the discussion, if you hated it, whatever, let us know. And we appreciate people dialoguing with us. Anything else, Tiny, before we go?
Um, United we stand, divided we fall.
Right
That's all I
on.
got to say.
All right. Thanks again, guys.